Hello, welcome back to another episode of From Prison to the Streets. I'm Eric, and I did a bunch of time in prison, and I talk about prison stuff. In this episode, we're continuing my story from where I left off. My last video about my story, I kind of talked about going to prison for the first time. I talked about my first day in prison, so if you haven't seen that video, you might want to go check it out. I'll put a thing up somewhere, and you can go do that. But I'm going to pick up from there. What was RDU like? What was it about? What was my experience there? And yeah, so let's do it. Be sure to like and subscribe. Here we go. When you go to prison in the state of Kansas, and in most states, you have to go to a diagnostics unit before you're put in GP somewhere at whatever facility you're going to be staying in. And that in Kansas is called RDU. That's the name of our diagnostics unit. Basically, you go in and you're there for a month, 2 months, sometimes longer, sometimes a really long time. You take a bunch of exams, you do a bunch of assessments, you're evaluated from a mental health perspective. And they do that to determine your security level and figure out where you're going to be placed and what programs are going to be best for your rehabilitation. When I got there, I was placed in segregation, basically. We didn't get any time out of our cells. It was a single man cell, and the reason why they do that is they don't know your security level. And in Kansas, at the time, the way they would do maximum security is you would have a single man cell. They wouldn't put max security guys together. From what I've heard, they've changed that now because we're so overcrowded in the state of Kansas. They're double bunking max and super max guys. I know a lot of you have probably seen my video about Dennis Rader. Well, he now has a cellie. So that's kind of funny. Anyway, so I got to RDU and they took me off my mental health medications, which at the time I was on a very large dose of Geodon in the morning and at night. It's a heavy-duty tranquilizer slash antipsychotic. And, they took me off of it cold turkey, no stepping down, so I was having some pretty bad withdrawals from that. I didn't like the food. The food was horrible, and, I wasn't liking it because the reality had just set in that this is the type of place I was going to spend the next 13 years of my life. And I was 17 years old. So, not trying to feel sorry for myself, just when you're 17 and you're looking at spending 13 years in a bad situation like that, it's kind of bleak. It's not a good feeling. I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody who's been through bad experiences. This is my experience. So that's where I was at mentally. I was sleep deprived. I couldn't sleep because they took me off my meds. I wasn't in a good state of mind anyway. If I had had sleep, I hadn't been eating. It sucked. And for a week, I was in seg, basically. I would go out to do my assessments. I would go to education or mental health and basically let them pick my brain so they could figure out what my security level was going to be and all that, and if I was, sane enough to put around other inmates. And eventually, about a week later, I got out of that cell house. I was in E2, I want to say. And they moved me to D1, which was a little bit more open. You had a cellmate, and you were allowed out for about an hour a day at night. And they didn't always give you your hour out. Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. It was kind of at their leisure. And we got to shower 3 days a week. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, they let us shower. And they had us in these red jumpsuits. They weren't the right size. And they gave us a pair of boxers and a white t-shirt on shower night. Funny thing in Kansas, though, in RDU, they wash all the whites and the jumpsuits together. So your whites end up pink. And I think they do that kind of on purpose to humiliate you. You know, you have a bunch of grown men walking around in pink, but it is what it is. But yeah, so we got an hour out at night to use the phone and, you know, watch TV if that was your thing, or play cards. That was kind of nice. And you could only call your immediate family while you were in RDU. You could only call your immediate family. And you could only buy hygiene items off of commissary. You did get commissary that you could buy, but you only could buy hygiene items while you were in RDU. You could spend $9 a month on hygiene items, which $9 in hygiene items, it goes pretty fast. You know, deodorant's expensive, shampoo's expensive, soap is expensive, toothpaste, toothbrush, all that stuff is expensive, and writing materials. So that was one of the things that I didn't really like about RDU. And they run it like a boot camp, kind of. They yell at you all the time, the officers, I mean. They talk to you like they're drill sergeants or something. And, you know, I'm a grown man. I wasn't at the time, I guess, but most of the people in there were grown men. You don't need to scream at me to get me to listen to what you say. You'll probably get a lot further with some respect. I'm kind of rebellious in a sense that when somebody screams at me, I kind of am less likely to do what they want me to do. But they get you up first thing in the morning, which is usually between 3:30 a.m. and 4:30 a.m., and they march you off to chow. Now, it was February at the time, so, you know, it was cold. And you're in slippers, basically. Nothing nice, but it's whatever. Now, I will say, when I first got to D1, I didn't stay in D1 very long. I moved from D1 cell house to D2 cell house. And the reason for that is they put me in with my co-defendant. Now, if you'll have watched some of my other videos talking about this guy had actually said some really bad things about me in court. And my mom tried to put hands on him, bless her heart. And then we were cuffed to each other when we were transported to RDU. We didn't really like each other very much. I really didn't like him very much, and he was kind of scared. Don't even get me started. When they moved us to D1, they put us in the same cell together, and I kind of found this amusing. And it was real early in the morning when they moved us. It was probably 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, it seemed like. And I climbed up on the top bunk and laid down. I was going to just lay there for a minute and kind of think about this situation. He did not even try to go to sleep. He got up and started pacing the cell. And I guess he thought that I was asleep, because when a female officer came around, I forget her name now, but she came around to do her security check. And this dude, Jake, hollers at her, and he said, "Hey, you know, I don't really feel comfortable being in a cell with this guy. We're on the same case, and there's some bad blood, and, you know, we're supposed to be central monitored." Now, in prison, that is called telling. Just so you know, that if anytime you go to a corrections officer, which we call the cops or the police in prison, anytime you go to one of them to solve your problems, it's looked down upon. You know, people will call you a rat for that. Within a few minutes after that, they pulled him out of the cell, and they told me that I was moving to D2. And that's what happened. I went to D2. I walked into a cell with a guy, and the dude was really cool. Hispanic cat named Eddie Rojas. They call him Monster. And he was in there for growing weed. He got busted with 14 plants or something like that. He was from the Garden City, and, you know, they call it G-Town. Eddie was a really cool dude. We got along right off the bat. He was respectful, super cool guy. I ran into him a couple times later on down the line in my sentence, and we always got along, you know. Cool dude. Anyway, we were cellies for a while, I think a couple of weeks, and we were going through our assessments and stuff, waiting to see what prison we were going to. RDU is kind of tough in a sense because you never know when you're leaving. You know, it could be a month, it could be 6 months. So that can be kind of tough, especially in an environment where you don't get to go outside and use the yard. You basically can come out to day room an hour a night. The rest of the time you're locked down unless you're going to your assessments. But we got along fine, and then one day they brought him his program agreement, and he signed it, and the next day he was transferred. And that's how it worked. They do all these assessments. They figure out what your security level is going to be, what programs you need to take, and then they'll bring you a program agreement basically saying that you agree to take these programs while you're in prison, and that's how you earn good time. You abide by your program agreement. And on that agreement, it tells you what facility you're going to, where you're supposed to be transferred to. So you get that the night before you're transferred, you sign off on it, and the next day you're on the bus to whatever prison you're going to. So that happened, and that's when I learned about the program agreements. Now, my mental state was getting a lot better because I'd been off my meds for a couple of weeks now, and everything was fine. Stuff was cool. I was getting along very well with people. Even though I was 17, everybody knew that I was there for shooting an alleged pedophile. I was kind of a local celebrity, you could say. Everybody respected that, and they wanted to be friends with me. Some people tried to recruit me for their sets, their gangs, whatever. But I really wasn't interested. I kind of wanted to do my own time. I just wanted to be left alone. And people seemed to respect that at first. After Eddie left, a guy named Nick Branch moved in. Nick was another guy who was really cool. We got into an argument one time, and it was my fault because I thought that I knew everything back then, and I had a bad temper. So, aside from a couple of little arguments, we never got in any fights. And, you know, he was clean, he was respectful, and he was a cool guy. He was a funny guy. He was in prison for stealing cars, if I remember right. And he had just got out of prison and came back, which is the case with a lot of guys. So we got along, we were hanging out, we were going to chow together and stuff. And then they moved in one of my other co-defendants. Now, I didn't really like this guy too much. At one point, he had been my best friend, but once again, he had said some stuff to the cops on our case that I didn't feel need to be said. And a lot of people from our county were there in the pod with us, and they were aware of, you know, what he said on the case. Everybody thought that I really hated this guy and I was going to do something to him. Now, unbeknownst to me, he felt like I was going to try to jump him, which I had actually gone and talked to him. I said, hey, look, I know there was some stuff said that shouldn't have been said, and I'm not going to hold a grudge over it. I just want to do my time and leave. A lot of people are going to disagree with that, right? You know, the prison code or the criminal code, whatever, is if someone talks about you, someone runs their mouth, you smash them, right? But this guy had been a really good friend of mine. We were kids, and kids do stupid shit. And I felt responsible for this dude being in prison because I pulled the trigger. He didn't. You know, he put hands on the dude, but he didn't pull the trigger. So had I not done that, we probably wouldn't have even gone to prison. So I felt responsible for this dude going to prison. And I went and I talked to him about it. You know, I said, look, I don't have a grudge against you. I'm not trying to do nothing to you. And I apologize for pulling the trigger, man. I told him that I felt responsible for him going to prison. And he said, yeah, man, it's cool. I understand that, but I'm not blaming you. It is what it is. It can't be changed now. I thought we were cool after that. But people were hyping him up. They were saying that I was going to try to jump him, try to put hands on him. And one day in the evening, it was chow time. I was sitting down with Nick. I was eating, and I felt something smack me in the back of the head. And I was confused at first. I thought someone was just playing with me. I thought they reached over and slapped the back of my head, you know. And I kind of looked around. I was a little bit confused, and then I felt it again. And the people sitting at my table just kind of... And then it occurred to me that someone was trying to fight with me. I don't know why I didn't realize it at first. I guess I have a high tolerance to pain or something, but usually when you get into a fight and somebody punches you, you won't even feel it till the next day. I'll hear it more than I feel it, for real. But we didn't really get to fight beyond that. I stood up and I got this, you know, I squared up. I was getting ready to fight him. But this is the chow hall. And in the chow hall and RDU, you always have what they call black suits around. They're the special security team. They're the goon squad. You know, they have a great big can of mace on them. Sometimes they're wearing stab vests. They're the guys they call when shit goes down. And the goon squad was there. The black suits were there. And as soon as it kicked off, they were ready to respond, you know. So that was, I think, another reason why he tried to get at me in the chow hall, because there's no blind spots and the cops are right there. When someone starts firing on you and the cops are right there, they want to get caught. They want the cops to come save them. And I can only speculate that that's why he did it, because he wasn't much of a fighter. Not at the time. He is now. And he's a good dude. You know, we talk to each other. And I like the dude. I don't have any hard feelings towards him. So I see him get all panicked and drop to the floor. And I'm thinking, what is he dropping to the ground for? I turn around right around the time all these black suits are getting to where we're at. And they grab me by the arm. I don't know if he was trying to put it behind my back. I don't know if he was trying to tackle me or what, but he wasn't very good at what he was doing. What he ended up doing was spinning me in circles while he was holding on to my arm like something from a Three Stooges sketch or something. Then another black suit is running towards us, and as I'm spinning around, I get spun right into this black suit as he tackles me. He tackled me so hard, my shoes came off. No exaggeration. My little Bruce Lee slippers that they issued me in RDU went flying. They put me in handcuffs, marched me off to the captain's office, told me that I was being written a DR for fighting, and they sent me to E2, back to the hole. Now, that night, I'm sitting there in the hole, and I'm kind of worried about my situation. In RDU, if you get any sort of write-up, it is going to delay your progression. DOC, KDOC uses a levels system. So if you're out of trouble, you know, you start out on level 1, and if you're out of trouble for 4 months, then you get your level 2. Then you can buy electronics like a TV, radio, that kind of thing. However, if you get a class 1 write-up, then you can't get your level for 8 months. So I was kind of worried about that. You know, I wanted to be able to get my electronics and stuff like that. And if you get in trouble when you're in RDU, you get put on restriction, which is basically level 0. You can't buy anything when you get to Gen Pop for 4 months. So you can buy hygiene items. That's it. When I say you can't buy anything, you can't buy shorts, you can't buy food, you can't do anything like that. You can only talk to immediate family on your phone list. You can't get visits. All of that stuff is restricted. So this had the potential to really screw me up. It could screw up my security level. It could screw up everything. On the one hand, I didn't want that to happen. On the other hand, I could not afford to, say what really happened. I looked through the rule book and everything, and it defined fighting as two people throwing hands, basically. And I didn't get a chance to hit him back. Cops tackled me before I could get that far. So I thought maybe if I do this right, I can get out of this. But I couldn't say that he hit me because that was snitching. I had to figure out how I could get out of this situation without saying he put his hands on me. So in the evening, they give you, after you've been sent to the hole for an infraction, they give you something called a witness list. And you can call officers or other inmates to speak on your behalf at your disciplinary hearing, which was going to be the next day. I called the officers, the black suits that were there, and wrote the disciplinary reports as witnesses to my hearing. So I'm in my hearing, and the hearing officer says, how do you plea? And I said, not guilty. And he's like, okay, what's your argument? And I'm like, I'd like to call my witnesses. And so, Officer Evans was a black suit that tackled me and knocked me out of my shoes. He was there, and I questioned him, and it was real simple. I said, Officer Evans, did you see the whole thing? And he said, yeah, I did. And I said, okay, did you ever see me hit the other inmate? He said, no, we broke it up before you could do that. He said, but you were going to. And I said, well, the IMPPs are the rules in prison, internal management policies and procedures. I said, the IMPPs don't say anything about I was going to. I said, did I or did I not hit him? And he said, you didn't hit him. I said, okay, so I wasn't fighting. And he said, well, that's true, but you didn't get on the floor when I told you to. And I could write you a DR for disobeying direct orders. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I did not hear you. I just got hit in the back of the head. It was a crowded chow hall. It was loud. I just didn't hear you. I didn't mean to disobey your orders. And he said, well, next time do what I tell you. And the hearing officer said, yeah, that's good advice by him. I'm not going to find you guilty on this, but you need to mind your P's and Q's. This could have gone very badly for you. And they sent me back to my cell. Within a few hours, they found me an open cell in E1, which was the max custody unit, for RDU. And that's where I finished out my time, in RDU. They put me in max. Now, even though I wasn't found guilty on that fight, it still affected my security level because they made me high medium. They wanted to make me max, and they did put me in max while I was in RDU. I didn't have a celly or anything like that. It was just like D2, but I didn't have a celly and I didn't have as much movement. And then one night, I think about 2 weeks later, they came and they gave me my program agreement. It said I was to take therapeutic community and pre-release reintegration, voc rehab, and I needed to get my high school diploma. I signed my program agreement, and it said at the top of it that I was going to be sent to Ellsworth Correctional Facility, and I was going to be transferred the next day. So I spent around a month in RDU, and I was supposed to go the next day. That night I didn't sleep that great. I was kind of anxious to go. I was ready to leave. I was tired of being there. I was ready for some more movement. I was ready to go hit the weight pit, get a job, make friends, and do some time. And I will continue talking about that in my next video in this series. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it very much. Hey, good news, guys. The channel is monetized now, so I might be able to get some money to help pay for some of the equipment and stuff that I use. And I really appreciate you guys for watching. I really appreciate that. Whether you're subscribed or you just watch the videos, I really appreciate it. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my story. But yeah, I'm Eric. This has been another episode of From Prison to the Streets. I will catch y'all later.